You ever notice how the ocean at night looks like a bruise? Not blue, not black. Something in between, something that swallows light and memory. I used to love that feeling, standing on the deck of a research vessel, salt wind in my face, the world behind me shrinking to a pinprick. Out there you're nobody. Just a speck on the skin of something ancient and indifferent. My name is Dr. Alex Mercer. I'm 38 years old, and for the last 12 years, I've been a deep-sea explorer for the United States government. Not the kind you see in documentaries, smiling for the camera, poking at coral with a stick. My work was classified. Black budget. The kind of missions that don't make it into the news or even the official logs. The kind of missions where you sign your life away before you ever set foot on the ship. I grew up in a landlocked town in Nebraska, about as far from the ocean as you can get. My father was a mechanic, my mother a nurse. I was the weird kid who read about shipwrecks and sea monsters, who built submarines out of Lego and filled the bathtub with plastic sharks. I used to dream about the ocean swallowing me whole, and I'd wake up gasping, heart pounding, but always wanting more. I got my PhD in marine biology, specializing in extremophiles, creatures that thrive where nothing else can. I thought I'd spend my life cataloging weird worms and glowing fish, but then the government came calling. They said they needed people who weren't afraid of the dark, people who could keep secrets. People who could look into the abyss and not blink. I said yes. God help me, I said yes. The first time I went down in a submersible, I thought I'd never breathe right again. The pressure, the cold, the way the light faded until there was nothing but the red glow of the control panel and the sound of my own heartbeat. You don't realize how loud your body is until you're a mile under the surface, surrounded by silence so thick it feels like a living thing. I remember the smell of the sub, metal, oil, sweat, and something else, something sour and electric that clung to your skin for days. I remember the way the hull creaked and groaned, like it was alive and unhappy. I remember the first time I saw a gulper eel, its mouth yawning open like a black hole, and thinking, this is what it means to be prey. But it wasn't the creatures that scared me. Not really. It was the things we weren't supposed to find. The things that didn't fit any taxonomy, that didn't make sense. The things that made the scientists go quiet and the military guys reach for their guns. There was a mission off the coast of Chile 5 years ago. We were supposed to be studying hydrothermal vents, but the readings were off, way off. The water was too hot, the chemicals all wrong. We found a field of bones, hundreds of them, picked clean and arranged in spirals. The official report said it was a whale fall, but I know what I saw. Some of the bones were human. After that, the missions got stranger, deeper. The briefings got shorter, the security tighter. We started carrying sidearms, just in case. I stopped asking questions. You learn not to after a while. You learn to keep your head down, do your job, and pretend you don't hear the things moving outside the hull at night. I made friends, of course. You have to, in this line of work. There was Sam, the engineer, who could fix anything with duct tape and a prayer. There was Dr. Yara Singh, a biologist with a laugh like breaking glass, who swore she'd seen a jellyfish the size of a car. There was Lieutenant Harris, our security officer, who never took off his sunglasses even in the dark. We became a family of sorts. A family built on secrets and shared nightmares. But families don't last long down here. Not when the ocean decides to take an interest. I remember one night, drifting in the dark, the sub's lights off to save power. We were a mile and a half down, the pressure outside enough to turn a human body into paste. I was staring out the viewport, watching the bioluminescent plankton swirl like stars, when something huge passed by, so close I could see the scars on its skin, the way its eye rolled in its socket. It was gone in a heartbeat, but I felt it watching us, waiting. After that, I started having nightmares. Dreams of drowning, of being pulled into the dark by hands I couldn't see. I'd wake up with salt on my lips, my heart racing, convinced I'd never see the sun again. But I kept going. We all did. Because that's what you do when you're a deep-sea explorer for the government. You go where they tell you. You see what they want you to see. And you keep your mouth shut. Until now. Because this last mission, this last descent, was different. The briefings were colder, the warnings sharper. The trench we were sent to explore didn't exist on any map. The coordinates were redacted, the data encrypted. They told us it was routine, but I could see the fear in the eyes of the men in suits. I could smell it, sharp and metallic like blood in the water. I should have walked away. I should have said no. But I didn't. I went down one last time. And now I'm here. Alone. Recording this because it's the only thing I can do. Because someone needs to know what's waiting in the dark at the bottom of the world. Someone needs to know the truth. The government doesn't do invitations. They do orders, delivered in manila envelopes that smell faintly of toner and fear. Mine arrived at 3:17 a.m., slipped under my cabin door while I was dreaming of sunlight and dry land. I woke to the sound of the envelope scraping the floor, my heart already pounding as if my body knew before my mind did. This was it. The last call. I showered in silence, the water lukewarm and metallic, the kind of shower that never quite washes the ocean off your skin. I dressed in the uniform they issued, navy blue, no insignia, no name tag. Just another ghost in the machine. My hands shook as I buttoned the collar. I told myself it was the cold. Depth, 1,000 meters. Entering the midnight zone, Sam reported. Outside the world had turned black. The only light came from the sub's flood lamps, cutting narrow cones through the darkness. Every so often something would flicker at the edge of the beam, a flash of scales, a glint of teeth, a shape too big and too fast to identify. Yara leaned closer to the glass, her breath leaving a faint smear. Did you see that? I followed her gaze, but there was nothing now. Just the endless dark, pressing in on all sides. Probably just a squid, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't look convinced. The pressure gauge crept higher, the numbers glowing red. I could hear the hull creak and groan, the sound vibrating through my seat. It was a reminder of just how fragile we were. 5 humans in a metal can, surrounded by miles of crushing water. Depth, 2,500 meters, Sam said, his voice barely above a whisper. Crossing into uncharted territory. The tension in the cabin was palpable. Even Harris had stopped fidgeting with his gun, his eyes fixed on the monitor. Ramirez and Chin exchanged a glance, their faces drawn and anxious. Suddenly the lights flickered. For a heartbeat, we were plunged into total darkness. My stomach dropped and I heard someone, maybe me, suck in a sharp breath. The lights snapped back on, but the moment lingered, a cold knot in my gut. Minor power fluctuation, Sam said, forcing a smile. Nothing to worry about. But I could see the sweat beading on his forehead. We kept descending. The data on my screen started to glitch. Numbers jumping, readings spiking and dropping at random. I tapped the monitor, but it didn't help. Getting some interference, I said. Anyone else? Yara nodded. My sensors are all over the place. Magnetic fields off the charts. Harris grunted. Just keep your eyes open. The sub shuddered, a deep, bone-rattling vibration that made my teeth ache. The lights dimmed again, then steadied. I glanced at Sam, who was frantically checking the controls. Talk to me, Sam, I said. Some kind of anomaly, he muttered. It's like, the instruments can't get a fix. I've never seen anything like it. Outside, the darkness seemed to thicken, swallowing the beams of our floodlights. The water was no longer empty. Shapes moved at the edge of vision, long, sinuous forms, clusters of glowing eyes, things that darted away when the lights touched them. Yara pressed her face to the glass, her voice trembling. There's something out there. I can feel it. I wanted to tell her she was imagining things, but I felt it too. A presence, vast and ancient, watching us from the shadows. Depth, 4,000 meters, Sam said, his voice barely audible. We're almost at the trench. The sub slowed, the thrusters whining as we approached the edge. The seafloor loomed into view, a jagged scar in the earth, darker than the water above. The trench yawned beneath us, a mouth waiting to swallow us whole. Activating external cameras, Sam said. The monitors flickered, showing grainy images of the trench walls, sheer cliffs covered in strange, pale growths, like fungal colonies or coral from another world. The water was thick with silt and debris, swirling in slow-motion eddies. Picking up movement, Yara whispered. Something big. A shadow passed beneath us, so massive it blotted out the lights. For a moment, all I could see was darkness, deeper than anything I'd ever known. The sub rocked, alarms blaring. The hull groaned, metal straining against the pressure. Stabilize, I shouted. Sam fought the controls, sweat streaming down his face. The sub leveled out, but the tension didn't ease. We hovered at the edge of the trench, the abyss yawning below. I stared into the darkness, my breath fogging the glass, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. For a moment, everything was still. Silent. The only sound was the soft hiss of the air system and the distant, mournful groan of the ocean. Then from the depths something moved, slow, deliberate, impossibly large. Eyes glinted in the dark, reflecting our lights back at us. I felt a cold certainty settle in my bones. We were not alone. And whatever was down here, it was waiting for us. The sub hung in the water, suspended above the trench like a bead of sweat on the edge of a blade. Every light inside felt too bright, every sound too loud. My own heartbeat thudded in my ears, a frantic drumbeat against the hush of the deep. Sam, hold us steady, I whispered, afraid that anything louder might draw attention from the dark below. He nodded, jaw clenched, hands white-knuckled on the controls. The thrusters hummed, fighting invisible currents that tugged at us, as if the trench itself wanted to pull us in. Yara's voice was barely more than a breath. I'm getting readings, movement, but it's not like anything I've seen. It's coordinated. Like a pattern. I leaned over her shoulder, peering at the monitor. The sonar showed shapes, dozens of them, moving in slow, deliberate arcs along the trench wall. Not random, not the aimless drift of fish or squid. It looked almost ritualistic. A shiver ran down my spine. What the hell are they doing? No one answered. Harris checked his weapon again, the click of the safety loud in the cramped cabin. Ramirez and Chin exchanged a glance, their faces pale and drawn. The sub's floodlights swept across the trench, illuminating a landscape that didn't belong on Earth. The walls were covered in pale, spindly growths, like coral but wrong, too symmetrical, too organized. Some pulsed with a faint, sickly blue light, casting eerie shadows that danced across the silt. Look, Yara breathed, pointing. Something moved at the edge of the light, a shape, long and sinuous with too many joints. It glided along the trench wall, its skin mottled and translucent, revealing a lattice of glowing veins beneath. As the light touched it, the creature paused, turning a bulbous, eyeless head toward us. I felt a pressure in my skull, a sudden sharp ache behind my eyes. The creature drifted closer, undulating through the water with impossible grace. Its body was covered in bioluminescent patterns that shifted and pulsed, almost like a language. Is it communicating? Chin whispered, voice trembling. The patterns on the creature's skin flickered, then stabilized into a series of concentric rings. The pressure in my head intensified, and for a moment I thought I heard something, a whisper not in my ears but in my mind. A wordless question, ancient and cold. I jerked back, heart racing. Did anyone else feel that? Sam nodded, sweat beading on his brow. Like it was inside my head. Yara's hands shook as she adjusted the sensors. It's emitting some kind of signal. Not electromagnetic, not sonar. Something else. The creature drifted closer, its body filling the viewport. I could see details now, rows of cilia along its flanks, a mouth that opened and closed in slow, deliberate pulses. It was beautiful in a way that made my skin crawl. Suddenly the sub's lights flickered. The creature recoiled, its patterns flaring bright white, then fading to black. The pressure in my head vanished, replaced by a ringing silence. Power's dropping, Sam said, panic creeping into his voice. Something's draining the systems. The monitors glitched, static crawling across the screens. The sonar went wild, shapes swarming around us, drawn by the light or the signal. The hull vibrated, a low, resonant hum that set my teeth on edge. Something's wrong, Harris growled, eyes darting. We need to move. But before Sam could respond, the sub lurched. Something massive brushed against the hull, hard enough to rattle the bolts. The lights died, plunging us into darkness. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of our breathing, ragged and terrified. Then outside, a faint blue glow bloomed. The creatures, dozens, maybe hundreds, circled the sub, their bodies weaving intricate patterns in the water. The light from their skins seeped through the viewports, painting the cabin in shifting, ghostly hues. Yara pressed her face to the glass, eyes wide with awe and terror. They're surrounding us. I felt the pressure in my head return, stronger this time. Images flickered behind my eyes, vast cities of coral and bone, impossible machines turning in the dark, a sense of age and hunger that made my soul shrink. They're showing us something, I whispered, barely able to speak. Ramirez clutched the armrests, knuckles white. I don't want to see. I don't want to. A sudden sharp crack echoed through the sub. The hull flexed, metal groaning. One of the creatures pressed its face to the viewport, its mouth opening in a silent scream. The patterns on its skin pulsed faster, frantic. The pressure in my head spiked and I felt, a warning. Danger. Fear. Not from us but from something deeper, something below the trench. They're afraid, Yara gasped. Not of us. Of what's down there. The subsystems flickered back to life, light stuttering on. The creatures scattered, vanishing into the dark as quickly as they'd appeared. For a moment, we sat in stunned silence, the only sound the soft hiss of the air system and the distant, fading hum of the creature's song. Sam broke the silence, voice shaking. What the hell just happened? I stared at the empty water outside, my heart pounding. We made contact. But I don't think we were the first. Yara turned to me, her eyes haunted. What do you mean? I hesitated, the image is still burning in my mind. I think something else is down there. Something even they're afraid of. Harris checked his weapon, jaw set. Then we'd better be ready. I nodded, forcing myself to breathe. The trench yawned below us, darker and deeper than ever. Whatever waited in that abyss, it was older than the creatures we just met. Older than the ocean itself. And now it knew we were here. The silence after the creatures vanished was suffocating. It pressed in on us, thick and heavy, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. The only sounds were the faint hum of the life support system and the occasional creak of the hull, each groan a reminder of the miles of water above us, waiting to crush us flat. I tried the comms again, twisting the dial, listening for anything, static, a voice, even a warning tone. Nothing. Just the endless hiss of dead air. We were cut off. No signal, no backup, no way out but up, and even that felt impossible now. Sam's hands shook as he checked the power systems for the third time in as many minutes. Batteries are draining faster than they should, he muttered, voice thin and brittle. It's like something's leaching the energy. Yara sat hunched over her console, eyes darting back and forth, lips moving in silent calculation. The readings don't make sense. The magnetic field is fluctuating and the temperature's dropping. It's not natural. Harris paced the narrow aisle, boots thudding against the metal floor. He kept glancing at the viewport as if expecting something to appear out of the dark. Ramirez and Chin sat together, whispering in low, urgent tones, their faces pale and drawn. I tried to focus to keep my mind on the data, but it was like trying to hold water in my hands. My thoughts slipped and slid, images from the contact replaying behind my eyes, those impossible cities, the sense of ancient hunger, the warning that wasn't meant for us. The hours stretched. Time lost meaning. The lights inside the sub flickered, sometimes dimming to a sickly yellow, sometimes flaring so bright it hurt to look. Shadows crawled along the walls, twisting into shapes that vanished when I blinked. I started hearing things. At first it was just the usual groans and pops of the hull, but then there were other sounds, soft whispers like voices just out of earshot. I'd turn, expecting to see someone behind me, but there was only empty space. Yara's voice broke the silence. Did you hear that? I looked up, heart pounding. Hear what? She shook her head, eyes wide. I thought, never mind. But I could see it in her face. She was scared. We all were. Sam snapped at her, voice sharp. Stop it. We need to focus. We need to get the power stabilized or we're dead. Yara glared at him, her hands trembling. I'm doing my best, Sam. Maybe if you... Enough, Harris barked, his voice echoing in the cramped cabin. We're not going to make it if we turn on each other. A tense silence settled over us. I could feel the paranoia growing, a living thing slithering through the air. Every glance felt like an accusation. Every movement, a threat. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw those creatures, their glowing patterns, the warning in their minds. I saw something deeper, something vast and formless, stirring in the trench below. I woke to the sound of someone crying. Ramirez curled up in his seat, rocking back and forth. Chin tried to comfort him, but her own hands shook. We're not alone, Ramirez whispered over and over. It's in here with us. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that we were safe inside the sub, but I couldn't. I felt it too, a presence, cold and watchful, pressing against the walls, seeping through the cracks. The air grew stale, thick with the scent of sweat and fear. The temperature kept dropping, our breath fogging in the cold. The condensation on the walls ran in slow, shivering rivulets, like the sub was sweating with us. Sam's voice came over the intercom, thin and distorted. Alex, can you come here? I made my way to the control room, every step echoing in the silence. Sam pointed at the monitor, his face pale. Look at this, he whispered. The external cameras showed the trench, but something was different. The pale growths on the walls were moving, writhing like a field of worms. Shapes flickered at the edge of the light, shadows that didn't belong, moving against the current. It's getting closer, Sam said, voice shaking. Whatever it is, it's coming up from below. I stared at the screen, dread coiling in my gut. We need to get out of here. He nodded, but I could see the hopelessness in his eyes. The power was dropping, the controls sluggish. We were trapped. Back in the main cabin, Yara was staring at the artifact we'd recovered, a small black stone, etched with patterns that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. She traced the lines with her finger, her eyes glazed. It's calling to me, she whispered. I can hear it. Can't you? I pulled her hand away, the stone icy cold to the touch. Don't. We don't know what it is. She looked at me, her pupils blown wide. It wants to go home. Harris stepped between us, his hand on his weapon. We need to destroy it. Whatever it is, it's messing with our heads. Ramirez started to laugh, high and thin. You can't destroy it. It's part of this place. It's part of us now. The tension snapped. Harris grabbed the artifact, raising his pistol. Back off. Yara lunged at him, screaming. Chen tried to pull her back, but Yara's nails raked across Harris's arm, drawing blood. The artifact clattered to the floor, rolling under a console. For a moment, everyone froze, breathing hard. The sub rocked, a deep, resonant thud echoing through the hull. I picked up the artifact, my hands numb. For a second I felt something, an image, a memory not my own. Darkness, hunger, a voice whispering in a language I didn't understand. I dropped the stone, heart racing. We need to pull it together. If we lose control, we're dead. No one argued. We all knew it was true. The lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness. In the silence I heard it, a voice soft and cold, whispering my name. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting the urge to scream. We were alone. Cut off. Surrounded by darkness and things we couldn't understand. And the worst part was, I wasn't sure if the real danger was outside the sub, or inside our own minds. The sub was a tomb. The air was thick with the scent of sweat, fear, and something else. Something metallic and ancient, like rusted iron left to rot in salt water. Every breath felt heavier, as if the pressure outside was seeping in, molecule by molecule, crushing us from within. I sat in the dim glow of the emergency lights, the artifact cold and heavy in my lap. The others were scattered around the cabin, each lost in their own private hell. Yara rocked silently, her eyes fixed on the shifting patterns of the stone. Sam stared at the flickering monitors, lips moving in a silent prayer. Harris kept his back to the wall, pistol resting on his knee, eyes darting to every shadow. Ramirez and Chen whispered in a language I didn't know, their voices thin and desperate. I couldn't stop thinking about the images that had flashed through my mind when I touched the artifact. Cities of bone and coral, machines turning in the dark, a hunger that stretched back before memory. I felt it now, a presence just beyond the edge of thought, watching, waiting. I needed answers. I needed to know what we were really doing here. I forced myself to my feet, knees trembling, and made my way to the comms console. The main system was dead, but the backup still had a trickle of power. I started digging, through encrypted files, hidden folders, anything the government had left behind in their rush to send us down here. Most of it was redacted, page after page of black bars and meaningless numbers. But then I found it, a folder buried deep, labeled Project Leviathan. My hands shook as I opened the first file. Audio logs. Video clips. Reports from other missions. Missions that had never made it into the official record. I listened, heart pounding, as voices whispered out of the static. Unexplained loss of contact at 6,000 meters. Crew reported hallucinations, paranoia, violent outbursts. Artifact recovered, emitting low-frequency signal, possible non-terrestrial origin. Containment protocols failed. Recommend immediate termination of all deep-sea operations. My blood ran cold. We weren't the first. We weren't even the 10th. The government had been sending teams down here for years, maybe decades, searching for something they didn't understand. Every team had vanished, lost to the dark. I scrolled further, finding a video file. I hesitated, then hit play. The screen filled with grainy footage. Another sub, another crew. Their faces were gaunt, eyes wide with terror. The camera shook as something slammed into the hull, alarms blaring. A voice screamed, "It's awake! It's awake!" before the feed cut to black. I sat back, heart hammering. The artifact in my lap seemed to pulse, the patterns shifting faster, more frantic. I realized with a sick certainty that it was a beacon. Not a relic, not a sample, an alarm. And we triggered it. Yara's voice broke through my thoughts, thin and trembling. "Alex, what did you find?" I looked up, meeting her gaze. They knew. The government. They'd been sending people down here for years trying to contain something. Every team failed. Every team disappeared. Sam's face went pale. "So we're just the next in line?" I nodded, the weight of it settling on my shoulders. We were never meant to come back. This wasn't exploration. It was a cover-up. A last-ditch effort to keep whatever's down here from reaching the surface. Harris cursed under his breath, gripping his pistol tighter. "So what the hell is it? What are we dealing with?" I glanced at the artifact, the patterns now swirling in dizzying spirals. "I think it's alive. Or at least it's connected to something that is. The creatures we saw, they were afraid. Not of us but of what's below. The artifact is a warning. A lock. And we just picked it. A deep, resonant thud echoed through the hull, rattling the consoles. The lights flickered, shadows twisting along the walls. I felt the presence again, closer now, pressing against my mind like cold fingers. Ramirez started to sob, rocking back and forth. We have to put it back. We have to put it back. Chin tried to calm him, but her own voice shook. It's too late. It's awake. It knows we're here. Yara clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Alex, what do we do? I stared at the artifact, the weight of our situation crashing down on me. We have to try to contain it. Seal the artifact, get it away from the trench. If we can't, we have to make sure it never reaches the surface. Sam's hands flew over the controls, desperate. Power's almost gone. We might have one shot to get out of here. Harris moved to the viewport, peering into the dark. Something's moving out there. Big. Real big. I joined him, heart pounding. The trench below was alive with movement. Shapes writhing in the darkness, eyes glinting in the faint light. And then, rising from the depths, a shadow so vast it blotted out everything else. It moved with a slow, terrible purpose, drawn by the artifact's call. The presence in my mind surged, a wave of hunger and rage. I staggered back, clutching my head, teeth gritted against the pain. Yara screamed, collapsing to the floor. Sam shouted, "We're losing pressure. Hull integrity's dropping." The sub rocked, alarms blaring. The artifact pulsed, brighter and brighter, the pattern spinning faster than ever. I realized in that moment that we were out of time. The thing in the trench was awake and it was coming for us. I grabbed the artifact, feeling its cold burn through my gloves. We have to end this. Now. The others looked at me, fear and hope warring in their eyes. I didn't know if we could survive. I didn't know if anyone would ever know what happened here. But I knew one thing. We couldn't let it reach the world above. The sub was no longer a vessel. It was a cage. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with panic and the coppery tang of blood. Every breath felt like inhaling the ocean itself, cold, briny, and ancient. The artifact pulsed in my hands, its patterns spinning so fast they blurred, casting sickly light across the cabin. I could feel it in my bones, a vibration that set my teeth on edge and made my vision swim. Outside, the trench was alive. Shadows writhed in the floodlights, twisting and coiling, drawn by the artifact's call. The thing below, whatever ancient intelligence we disturbed, was rising. I could feel its attention, vast and cold, pressing against my mind like a glacier. It was waking up and it was hungry. Sam's voice was a thin thread of sanity. Alex, the hull's not going to hold. Pressure's spiking. We have to do something, now. I tried to focus but my thoughts slipped and slid, images crowding my mind. Cities of bone, spirals of teeth, a darkness so deep it swallowed time. I saw myself from above, a puppet on strings, the artifact's patterns reflected in my eyes. Yara was curled in a corner, rocking and muttering. It's inside. It's inside. It's inside. Her voice was a broken record, looping endlessly. Harris stood by the hatch, gun drawn, eyes wild. Ramirez and Chen clung to each other, whispering prayers in a language I didn't know. The lights flickered, then died. The only illumination came from the artifact, its glow pulsing in time with my heartbeat. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. I could hear things moving outside, scraping, tapping, a chorus of whispers that seemed to seep through the hull. Then a voice, not spoken but inside my head. You are not welcome. You are not worthy. I staggered, clutching my skull. The others cried out, some collapsing, some screaming. The presence was everywhere, filling the sub, filling us. I felt my memories unraveling, my sense of self dissolving in the tide. Sam grabbed my arm, his grip desperate. Alex, stay with me. Don't let it in. I tried to answer, but my mouth wouldn't work. The artifact burned in my hands, the patterns shifting into something I almost recognized. A map, a warning, a command. I saw flashes of the entity's mind, eons of solitude, a prison built from fear and necessity, the endless hunger that gnawed at its core. The sub lurched violently, alarms blaring. The hull groaned, metal shrieking as something massive brushed against us. The pressure was unbearable, my ears popping, blood trickling from my nose. Yara screamed, her voice raw. It's here. It's here. Through the viewport, I saw it. A shape so vast it defied comprehension, all eyes and mouths and writhing limbs. It moved with a terrible grace, ancient and patient, its gaze fixed on us. The water around it boiled with bioluminescent life, the smaller creatures fleeing in terror. Harris fired his gun, the the shots deafening in the confined space. The bullets punched uselessly into the glass, ricocheting off the walls. He turned the weapon on the artifact, but I yanked it away, the force of the entity's will guiding my hands. Release me. Feed me. The words echoed in my skull, a hunger that was not my own. I felt myself slipping, my will eroding under the weight of its mind. I saw visions of the surface, cities drowned, skies blackened, humanity reduced to prey. Sam slapped me hard. Alex, fight it. You have to fight. I gasped, the pain snapping me back. I clutched the artifact, forcing my thoughts into a single point of focus. We can't let it out. We can't. The entity's rage was a tidal wave crashing through my mind. The sub shook, panels ripping free, water spraying in thin, icy jets. Ramirez was pulled away from Chin, his scream cut off as the hatch buckled inward. The pressure alarms wailed, red lights strobing in the dark. Yara crawled to me, her eyes wild. Give it the artifact. Maybe it'll let us go. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. If we do, it'll escape. It'll destroy everything. Harris staggered forward, gun raised. Then we destroy it. Now. He fired at the artifact. The bullet struck, and for a moment the patterns froze. The entity howled, a sound that vibrated through the water, through the hull, through my bones. The artifact cracked, light spilling out in blinding waves. The sub was coming apart. Water poured in, freezing and relentless. Sam tried to seal the breach, but the controls sparked and died. Chin was gone, swept away in the chaos. Yara clung to me, sobbing. The entity pressed closer, its form filling the viewport, eyes burning with ancient malice. I felt its will, a command to open the hatch, to let it in, to become part of its endless hunger. I fought back, clinging to the last shreds of myself. I remembered sunlight, laughter, the taste of salt on my lips. I remembered why we came here, not for glory, not for discovery, but to protect the world above. With the last of my strength, I hurled the artifact at the viewport. It shattered, shards spinning in slow motion. The entity recoiled, its scream a hurricane in my mind. The sub imploded, water rushing in, cold and black and final. In those last moments, as the world dissolved into darkness, I felt the entity's grip loosen. I saw its prison closing, the artifact's light sealing it away once more. My last thought was a prayer, that it would hold. That the world above would never know what slept in the deep. And then there was only silence. The world was a blur of red lights and rushing water. The sub groaned and shuddered, metal screaming as the pressure clawed at every seam. My lungs burned with cold, briny air, and every breath tasted of blood and salt. The artifact's fractured glow pulsed in the darkness, shards of it scattered across the floor like the bones of some ancient, broken god. Sam was gone. Chin was gone. Ramirez's scream still echoed in my ears, swallowed by the black. Only Yara and Harris remained, their faces pale and wild in the strobing emergency lights. The entity pressed against the hull, its form shifting and writhing, a nightmare of eyes and mouths and hunger. I could feel it inside my head, a voice that was not a voice, promising oblivion, promising release. Yara clung to my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Alex, we have to get out. We have to. There's no way out, Harris snapped, his voice cracking. He was bleeding from a gash above his eye, his pistol empty, his hands shaking. We're dead. We're all dead. The sub lurched again, a deep, resonant boom reverberating through the hull. Water sprayed from a ruptured seam, icy and relentless. The artifact's light flickered, casting monstrous shadows that danced across the walls. I forced myself to think, to focus. The artifact was the key. It was the lock, the beacon, the only thing keeping the entity from breaking free. If it shattered completely, the thing in the trench would be unleashed. If I could destroy it, really destroy it, maybe I could seal the entity away, even if it meant sacrificing everything. I looked at Yara, her eyes wide with terror and hope. We have to finish this. We have to make sure it never gets out. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, Alex, please. There has to be another way. There isn't, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. If it escapes, the world is finished. We have to stop it here. Harris staggered to his feet, swaying. How? The sub's dead. We're dead. I stared at the artifact, the patterns on its surface flickering like dying fireflies. The reactor. If we overload it, we can destroy the artifact, and ourselves. The pressure, the heat, it might be enough. Yara sobbed, clutching my sleeve. You can't. You can't ask us to. I'm not asking, I said, my voice breaking. I'm telling you. I'll do it. You two get to the escape pod. Maybe you'll make it. Maybe you won't. But I have to try. Harris looked at me, something like respect flickering in his eyes. You're insane. Maybe, I said. But it's the only way. The entity howled, a sound that vibrated through the water, through the hull, through my bones. The sub shook, panels tearing free, water pouring in. I could feel the thing's rage, its hunger, its desperate need to be free. I crawled to the reactor panel, my hands numb and clumsy. The controls sparked and hissed, the screen flickering with warnings. I started the overload sequence, my fingers moving on autopilot, guided by training and terror. Yara knelt beside me, her hand on my shoulder. Alex, please. Don't do this alone. I looked at her, saw the fear and love and sorrow in her eyes. You have to go. If there's any chance, you have to take it. She shook her head, tears falling. I'm not leaving you. Harris grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the escape pod. Come on. We don't have time. The sub groaned, the hull buckling. The entity pressed closer, its form filling the viewport, eyes burning with ancient malice. I felt its will, a command to stop, to surrender, to open the hatch and let it in. I fought back, clinging to the last shreds of myself. I remembered sunlight, laughter, the taste of fresh air. I remembered why we came here, not for glory, not for discovery, but to protect the world above. The reactor's timer counted down, the numbers glowing red. 30 seconds. 20. 10. Yara's face was the last thing I saw before Harris dragged her into the pod, sealing the hatch. I heard her scream my name, muffled by the thick metal door. The entity's voice filled my mind, a hurricane of hunger and rage. You cannot stop me. You are nothing. I gritted my teeth, forcing my thoughts into a single point of defiance. Maybe. But I'm enough. The reactor went critical. The artifact flared, its light blinding. The entity screamed, a sound that shattered thought, shattered time. The sub imploded, the world collapsing into fire and darkness and silence. In those final moments, I felt the entity's grip loosen. I saw its prison closing, the artifact's light sealing it away once more. I thought of Yara and Harris, hurtling toward the surface, and hoped they would make it. I thought of the world above, blissfully unaware of the nightmare sleeping beneath the waves. My last thought was a prayer, that it would hold, that the sacrifice would be enough. And then there was only darkness. Darkness. Not the kind you find behind closed eyes or in a room with the lights off. This was the darkness of the deep, the kind that presses in on you, thick and endless, swallowing every thought, every memory. I floated in it, weightless, lost. For a moment, maybe a second, maybe a century, I thought I was dead. But then pain returned, sharp and electric, lancing through my chest. I gasped, salt water burning my throat, and realized I was alive. Barely. The sub was gone. The world was gone. All that remained was the emergency pod, a tiny bubble of air and flickering red light, drifting somewhere between the abyss and the surface. I coughed, every muscle screaming, and forced myself to sit up. My head throbbed. Blood trickled from my nose, mixing with the salt on my lips. The pod creaked and groaned, battered by currents I couldn't see. The air was thick with the stench of ozone, burnt plastic, and fear. I looked around. The pod was empty. Yara and Harris, gone. Maybe they'd made it to another pod. Maybe they were already on their way up, or maybe the ocean had claimed them as it claimed everything in the end. I fumbled for the emergency kit, hands shaking. My fingers closed around the recorder, a battered, government-issued relic, its red light blinking. I stared at it, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on me. The world needed to know. Someone needed to know. I pressed record. My name is Dr. Alex Mercer. If you're hearing this, I'm probably already dead. I was part of a government deep-sea exploration team. We were sent to investigate a trench deeper than anything on record. They told us it was a routine mission. They lied. My voice sounded strange, hollow, echoing in the cramped pod. I tried to steady myself, to focus on the facts, but the memories came in jagged flashes. Sam's scream, the artifact's glow, the entity's voice in my mind. We found something down there. Something ancient. Something alive. The government knew. They'd been sending teams for years, trying to contain it, trying to keep it secret. Every team failed. We were just the latest sacrifice. The pod shuddered, a deep groan reverberating through the hull. I flinched, heart pounding, half expecting to see the entity's eyes staring back at me through the viewport. But there was only darkness and the faint, distant glow of bioluminescent creatures swirling past. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. If you find this recording, don't go back. Don't let them send anyone else. The thing in the trench, it's not dead. We barely managed to seal it away. But the artifact, the lock, it's damaged. I don't know how long it will hold. A wave crashed against the pod, sending it spinning. I clung to the seat, nausea rising in my throat. The pressure gauge flickered, warning lights blinking. I was running out of air. I was running out of time. I thought of Yara, of Harris, of all the others who'd vanished into the dark. I thought of the world above, blissfully unaware of the nightmare sleeping beneath the waves. I forced myself to keep talking, to leave a record, even if it was only for the black box at the bottom of the sea. They'll try to cover this up. They always do. But you have to believe me. The ocean isn't empty. It isn't safe. There are things down there, things older than humanity, older than the world itself. We were never meant to find them. We were never meant to wake them. My voice broke. I wiped my eyes, the salt stinging. The pod's lights dimmed, the battery dying. The cold crept in, numbing my fingers, my toes, my thoughts. If you're hearing this, run. I'd burn this message if you have to. But don't let them send anyone else. Don't let them open the trench. Some things are better left in the dark. The recorder clicked, the red light blinking slower and slower. I slumped back, exhaustion washing over me. The pod rocked, drifting upward, or maybe downward, I couldn't tell anymore. The darkness pressed in, soft and final. I thought of sunlight, of the taste of fresh air, of the world I might never see again. I thought of the entity sealed away for now but not forever. I wondered if anyone would ever hear my warning, or if it would be lost, just another secret swallowed by the deep. The last thing I remember is the sound of my own breathing, slow and ragged, echoing in the dark. Then, finally, silence. The world above is nothing like the world below. Up here the air is thin and bright, the sun a pale coin behind clouds. The hospital room smells of antiseptic and old paper, a far cry from the brine and rot of the deep. I lie in a bed, wrapped in scratchy sheets, my body bruised and battered, my mind drifting between waking and dreams. They found me washed up on a rocky shore, half dead, clinging to the emergency pod like a barnacle. I remember flashes, hands pulling me from the surf, voices shouting, the blinding white of floodlights. I remember the cold, the endless cold, and the darkness pressing in, even as they wrapped me in blankets and pumped warmth into my veins. Now I stare at the ceiling, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor, the distant murmur of nurses in the hall. I try to tell myself it's over, that the thing in the trench is sealed, that the world is safe. But I know better. I feel it in my bones, in the ache behind my eyes, in the way the shadows in the corners of the room seem to shift when I'm not looking. A man in a suit enters the room. He's tall, thin, with a face like a knife and eyes that never blink. He carries a briefcase and a clipboard, and he smells faintly of salt water, though I know that's impossible. "Dr. Mercer," he says, voice smooth as oil. "You've been through quite an ordeal." I nod, throat too dry to speak. He sits beside the bed, opening the briefcase. Inside is a recorder, my recorder, the one I used in the pod. He sets it on the table, the red light blinking, waiting. "We recovered this with you," he says. "We've listened to your message. It's quite a story." He leans in, his eyes boring into mine. "You understand, of course, that none of this can leave this room. For your own safety. For everyone's safety." I try to speak, to warn him, but my tongue feels heavy, my thoughts sluggish. The shadows in the corner seem to pulse, growing darker, deeper. He stands, closing the briefcase. "Rest now, Dr. Mercer. We'll take care of everything." He leaves, the door clicking shut behind him. The room is silent, except for the heart monitor and the soft, rhythmic drip of N4. I close my eyes, exhaustion pulling me under. But as I drift, I hear it, a faint, wet scraping like something dragging itself across tile. I open my eyes, heart pounding, but the room is empty. Then, in the reflection of the window, I see it, a flicker of movement, a pattern of light, swirling and shifting just like the artifact. For a moment, I see eyes, too many eyes, watching me from the darkness. The heart monitor spikes, alarms blaring. Nurses rush in, their faces blurring at the edges. I try to scream, to warn them, but the words die in my throat. As the world fades, I realize the truth. The entity is not gone. It followed me back. And now it's awake.